people of Poland have risen. On October 31st, after years of witnessing their human rights systematically degraded by the ruling Law and Justice Party, or PIS, hundreds of thousands took to the streets of Warsaw to protest a new, humiliating ban on abortions. What's remarkable is that this was a civil society-led movement. Feminist groups, LGBTI organizations, human rights activists, hand in hand, mobilizing critical masses under a value which rings so powerfully in Poland: solidarity. So we travelled to Warsaw to sit down with two renowned human rights defenders on their big day. Julia Maciocha, president of Warsaw Pride and one of the organisers of the protest, and Bart Staszewski, film director and LGBT activist, tell us just how we got here, but also what their expectations are and the long road ahead to equality. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Human Rights Defender, live from Warsaw. For people who've been following the situation in Poland over the past few years, we've been recognized that there's been almost systematic decline regarding the case of human rights, discrimination generally against minority groups, the rule of law, of course, freedom of expression. In many accounts, Poland has been making many backtracks. And actually we planned this trip to be speaking with some LGBT activists from Poland a few weeks ago. Little did we know that the time that will be coming will be probably the most momentous and breathtaking struggle actually taking place on the streets today, actually. Give us a bit of background for viewers that may be not so aware. How did we get here? What are some of the steps that actually got to where we are today in this moment? Perhaps you, ladies.
In case of the abortion rights, it's nothing new at all. This is also something that our government sometimes is trying to push in foreign media. It's not a change. We had a ban on abortion before. The abortion was only legal in 3 cases. So in case of massive damage of the fetus, in case of the threat of life of a person that is pregnant, and the last one is in case of pregnancy from rape. So it was already super harsh, and it was already one of the most difficult abortion laws in whole Europe. And it's not also something new that we are protesting. I was on the streets 7 years ago, 10 years ago with the same signs. Nothing has changed. But what has changed right now is I think that everyone is fed up with this whole COVID situation. Our government is not handling it at all. People are losing jobs. They don't know what is happening. They don't trust the government because they are acting like they are childs, in the fog, and they are just like doing some stuff that makes no absolutely sense. So I think right now people, it's not only about abortion. People are just angry about the government because right now in the middle of the pandemic, where our country is struggling, they are just dealing with abortion. Why? Is it the first topic that they should handle? But yes, right now they are trying to ban abortion on this first case of the fetal damage on the fetus, which is not a lot abortions actually. Per year it's more or less 1,000 abortions. So it's not a number that is going to change something, I don't know, in case of whole country, but it was 98% of abortions that were legal. So that's why when we are talking that we are getting a whole ban on abortion, because right now these other 2 cases you can count them on one hand, especially, and this is something that is also important, most of doctors, especially on the eastern part of Poland, are using this conscious clause, and they are saying that they are not going to conduct abortion even if it's legal, because it hurts them so much, even though they were conducting these abortions 20 years ago, but fine.
But why do you feel that this issue As Julia just mentioned, protests have been going on for years. We already had some of the strictest measures here. Why do you think this issue right now is what has been able to mobilize such broad aspects from society and bring such a great amount of people to the streets?
I think this answer is very simple. People are pissed off. Pissed off by this, what is happening to the people, because the Law and Justice Party is saying them what to do. The church is very influential and is also player in this game, political game, using the hate speech against the women, against the LGBT people. So they need to pay a price for it. I mean, they are paying already. They are hiding like rats because now the president is somewhere else, not in the presidential palace. The archbishops and bishops are hiding somewhere, hiding behind the police officers who are protecting the churches, with the soldiers who are on the streets because of the COVID, because there are too small number of the police officer and whatever. So they are paying the price of their years of, for the church it was many years, for the land justice is the years of being in the ruling party, all of the hate they have used against the people.
Whose protests are these? I mean, of course, Sztaj Kobiety have taken the main charge, but you see chants regarding many things. It's become, in many cases, an anti-government protest. You mentioned now aspects because of Corona. We hear now Antifa, for example, will be joining. You hear some right-wing groups will be joining. Let's not mention how many LGBT rainbow flags we saw. Who is actually in control, and how confident are you that the human rights angle is really at the forefront of this struggle right now?
We can't be sure. This is why we have to be also on the streets. And this is why we are so tired, because for some people this fight started 1 week ago, and they are on the streets for 1 week and they're like, yeah, I have still strength, I'm going to the protest. But we are on the streets for several years, and it's just super exhausting, because it makes me really angry when I'm entering a protest and all I can hear is homophobic people, or a man talking on a women's rights protest, or people just saying some curse words against our government. And yes, people are losing the sense of the protest. That's why this is so important for us to remind them why are we actually protesting. And this is also super important for us to protect these vulnerable groups, for example, LGBTQ people within this protest. 2 days ago, the main organizers, so Ogólnopolski Strajk Kobiet, they changed their logo on to the flashlight with a rainbow, and there were so many hateful comments saying that I'm protesting for abortion, not for this LGBTQ ideology. Mm-hmm. And this is why we have to be on the streets right now, even more than we were before, to remind people that if you are fighting for only one rights, you are not fighting for equal rights, you are fighting for a privilege. Mm-hmm. For another group, and someone is left behind.
Mm-hmm. So essentially what you're saying is, not only are you going up against the media, against institutions, against the state and all this, and there is also an inner struggle within the process to actually make sure this goes into the right place.
This is how the activism look like.
I was curious about the role that the government is trying to make there, because I saw on TVP, which is the national broadcaster, they called Friday, the protest today, they called it Rainbow Friday. This is how they refer to it. What is the thinking behind this? Do you think they are trying to sort of make these divisions in society to show people who may not be, let's say, more progressive, to try and make this division essentially?
I think that it's very hard, to understand what is behind the brains of those who are in charge in public TV, because what they are doing is so primitive and cheap propaganda. When they say that there is like death cedar between the people who are on the marches, horrible titles that are in the TV under the news reportage at the prime time, the horrible fake news stories they create, and so much primitive. They are targeting it to some very devoted part of audience who always vote for the land justice, and even the most right-wing, the Confederacja Party, and they are just giving the meal because what we see, there is nothing with true, and sometimes you are just laughing, sometimes you are just fact-checking if they done it in reality. I mean, because there are some screenshots and you just check if they are true, and I don't know what stay behind those things that I do. They're so horrible and mad. Of course, the propaganda tool for the government, but so much horrible that I cannot understand what stays behind particular cases.
Is it surprising to you that one of the biggest, let's say, popular demonstrations that have taken place in the past decade or two in the country is actually being on a progressive angle, and it's about LGBT rights and it's about abortion rights? Is it surprising to you that this has occurred and galvanized over this?
It's not surprising at all, because instead of sitting and, in a circles of people that are admiring us, which is something that our government and the church is doing, we are talking to people. We are actually doing this education that has to be done. And this is something that our government and the church has missed. They were so drunk with the power and the money that they got that they didn't actually notice that young people are not going to churches anymore, that young people are not spending their time watching Netflix and TikToks. They are actually getting a good education, that they are learning from other young people from abroad. And I guess the first thing that has started it was the climate strike, the youth climate strike. When young people, 13, 14 years old, they felt that they have the power. And right now, if you are going out of the streets of Warsaw, you can see people of different ages. But if you would look for the whole Poland, it's young people that are protesting. And these people are not going to church. They don't care about what our church thinks. They are not watching national TV. They don't believe national TV. So for me, it was not surprising at all. We were seeing a huge rise, people attending also equality marches, pride parades in Poland, people that got educated, a huge wave of coming outs that were also very educational for parents. So what I'm seeing right now, it's not surprising for me, but this is also very important. The case of abortion, in case of lethal damage to fetus, so if the person is going to give birth to that child, is not going to survive, mostly. It's something that is beyond politicians. It's something that is beyond the church. This is something so deeply put into the woman's, into the mother's heart, that I've seen my friends that are very conservative going out of the streets. It's not the conservative issue, I would say right now. And this is also something that the church and government is not going to understand, because there is only men there and they are not listening to women. And this is how they are paying the price for that.
I totally agree with you, Lian. I think this is the case, that this sick relationship between the church and politicians who used to say that we have 90% of Catholics in Poland. Oh, they used to repeat it every time. And now they see those 90% of Catholics who are maybe very connected to those rituals and stuff like this, but deeply in their heart they feel that it's wrong. And the others, those young people who was before on the climate strike, who was on the pride parades, who was on the equality march, now they have this awareness and they have built it for the last years. The more government is pushing, the harder response they get. And this response is now on the streets. They miss this point, they miss this momentum, and now they think that they will turn it somehow by doing some new bills, creating some new speeches and whatever. But it's too late. I think that the revolution, we see the effect right now, but it happened already. The young people are aware. They have the knowledge. They don't see the demons in the LGBT people. This horrible primitive propaganda, what is also in the churches and from the words of the politicians. it's not, they're not the target of it. I mean, they not listen to them because they don't believe it. It's too primitive. When you say that the people are the rainbow flag, like the Archbishop told last year, so those young people just look on each other and see normal people in those in their friends with the same goals and dreams. So I think that they, as Julia told, they missed this point, and it's too late. They can't just hide.
How is it that youth have now been empowered to really take the lead here?
The internet. We are not living in a cave right now, you know, and young people are getting knowledge also from the sites that are written in English. They are learning English, so they are getting to know that there are churches in many countries that are open for gay people. There are churches in many countries that are separating believing in God and engaging into religious practices from the hate to other people. And they see that there is this true faith. Many young people, if you search it on TikTok, many young people from different countries are talking about God, about how they believe in Jesus, and they are like also attending pride parades, they're also attending women's rights marches. So young people in Poland saw that this is possible. And why do we still have this government? Because these young people weren't able to vote for the last few years. So what I'm hoping for is that in the next election, we will have the switch made by young people. Also, what has changed, I believe, is that, you know, I'm also young, but I'm quite like almost 10 years now older than these people that we are calling young in this conversation.
There's a new generation.
Yes, and we were very pushed to succeed, you know, like no one in my high school was engaged in any kind of activities that are after school, except for extra classes. I was the weird one. Right now, it's something normal for young people to engage in different extra activities. It's also normal for them to express their views, also views that might be controversial for their teachers. And this is also something that has changed. So I believe that internet did the wrong. So this is one thing that our church might not be wrong, that the internet is the devil here.
VOD, I think. The Netflix, the HBO, those old series, the hundreds of millions that are put to those films that shows people that you can have dreams, you can have a beautiful life, and you can be LGBT, queer, whatever you want, and you don't hurt anybody. And I think it made a job. And therefore those speeches of politicians who are against something are not enough, because maybe those young people are not enough politically aware of what is happening. But they are just now aware of that what is happening against abortion, and that they are for the LGBT rights, and if they will be going to vote, for sure they will vote for some progressive liberal candidate. Because people, as usually, they are progressive. They are not to hide to the caves and to be afraid of everyone. And this is why I think it's happening also. And what you also see, and it's worth to mention, that this holiness of the church, those untouchable priests. And I seen the young girls who told to the press in some small city, like 40,000 people, to fuck off from my vagina. It was something I was very happy to see it, because now we see those stereotypes, this holiness of the church, that they are not untouchable, is breaking and it is falling down, and it will change our reality forever, I think. And I remember how surprised was this press, because we have this years that you can do whatever you want, but you cannot touch the priest. Or it's maybe not better to do some gossips about him. It's the church thing, you know. And now it's breaking. Now it's falling down, this taboo of not touching the church.
In revolutions and protests and stuff are so often a case of hearts and minds, winning the hearts and minds of wider society and so on. And I've noticed, and I've heard from some of my friends from Poland, that in this protest there's been some changes. You mentioned this sort of speaking, in this kind of language towards priests. We've seen some people even go towards the churches to try to have some confrontation. We've seen for the first, without saying it in Polish, there's referring to peace with a swear word, and everyone's swearing this, and as I understand, again, thinking about Polish society, it's a generally conservative society. It's not really a language which was seen so often. Do you fear that by making it more at youth level, making it more radical, and making it more sort of interesting? I saw, for example, there is a techno party at the
today
as well. And there's, all these sort of events. Do you feel that this kind of is at risk with alienating other parts of society which may not be? Or is it time to actually say, look, this is what we represent, it's time for you to come and join us, essentially? Is there a clash in a sense?
There is always a clash, and I would give you a different answer if you would ask me Julia as an activist, as Julia as a president of Warsaw Pride. And of course we have to separate it in terms of what we're doing. What I love about this protest right now is that everyone can find their place. There are protests where there are no swearings. There are protests that you can freely hold a rainbow flag and you don't have to fear about it. There are techno protests because actually this is kind of music that was always supporting the minorities groups. So everyone can find their own place. Me as an activist, this is my time, and I'm telling you, either you are taking it, either you are on the wrong side of the history. And if the swear word is the biggest problem that you see during this protest, then you are the part of the problem, because, look around on what is happening in this country. But then, if we are making, for example, Equality Parade or Pride Parade here in Poland, we are using this language of love. So we are asking people not to use the hate words, because this is this is the way that we want to fight. This is how we want to gather different groups on our protests. Also, a lot of young people, young kids. So we don't want to put them into a situation that their parents might be angry or something. So I guess that there is a different parts of me. But also, I'm okay not swearing at the protests because I'm really good. I spend my time there, okay, thanks. But if someone feels the need to swear, then this is their time to do it. They are not going to do it at home. What's the point to scream at the walls, So I'm always pro-expression, and if this is something that people want to express, then this is the time.
I also think that there is always the time and always the place. There are different tactics to reach the goals, and I believe that what we are doing now and seeing right now is just a beginning. I am not telling that we should throw stones on people, but I will see what will happen and what the government will do. If the government will create a martial law or the state of emergency, like they can do, and there are some gossip that they will do this, so people will react responsibly to this. And they will not listen to the liberal journalists who are telling, oh, you should do that, or by this way, you should be more peaceful. We are somehow in the turning point of Polish history. It can end differently. It can end like this. After the 1 month, nobody will remember about this, but I think that everybody will. Or there will be some revolution, and then this government will fall down. We'll have a new government, I hope for it. We're gonna see we have this beautiful history of peaceful solidarity movement where we peacefully change the government. We're gonna see if it will happen here. Nobody knows, and this is the biggest question. And even me, Julia, everyone, we are just hoping and doing the best. And as a male, I can just support and not to tell what to do.
But also as LGBT activists, and this is the point I had before, there was already questions that we had regarding Poland that we wanted to talk about, issues here, LGBT-free zones declared and so on. How did this manage to go by without such a reaction?
Of course, there was some articles, some reportages, but there was lack of the human stories. People who are the target of those horrible acts, there was lack of some images like this. The media need to have something to show it. It was some, of course, horrible act, but it was hard to spot. So media, as journalists, are lazy. Usually take another subject that was easier to catch. They have human stories, they have human they can speak with. Because sometimes they was asking if there is anyone from the LGBT-free zone. So there was nobody responding. So I think that by the Atlas of Hate group, who was creating this interactive map of Poland and the zones, the hate zones that are here, and the resolution that came by this of the European Union at the last year, we started a debate. Then there came my project with the photos, and so we grow up this debate about what is happening. So connecting the creativity and the hard work of people who was collecting these LGBT-free zones in Poland and having this virtual map, we find a way to reach the people, those who are sometimes in the iPhones, sometimes not caring a lot about what is happening around them. So the creativity and the new methods of the new media was the things that we used to catch the attention of the people and the media and the journalists and politicians.
As activists that have been fighting for your rights for several years now, do you think this is you mentioned Solidarność, but this is your generation's test essentially? Do you get this impression? Is it an all or nothing scenario, the D-Day? I've heard so many descriptions of what today and these next few days could be.
We never know what will be next day or next year. I was thinking that 2019 was the worst year ever. Now the 2020 came.
What I'm saying exactly is that is it possible that in a move which was, let's say, essentially about abortion, that many bigger questions may be answered? We may actually see progressive change in this country as a result of one policy.
The case is that we are already seeing the progressive change in this country, and this is something worth mentioning. More than 50% of people in Poland right now are supporting civil union between same-sex couples. More and more people are supporting just general marches. They are joining the marches. More and more people are coming out. More and more people are taking the advantage of talking to media, foreign media, or just our national media, to talk about what they are experiencing in this country and that this is wrong. And I have different stages of my life with believing or not that this fight is going to over someday. And right now I'm in the stage that I don't think it's going to over, because there is always someone that we have to fight for. And this is also not a fight that hasn't any particular ending, because even if we are going to get this rights for LGBTQ people, then there is going to be another minority group that we cannot leave behind, because they were also supporting us in this fight. But what I'm very positive about is the winning right now. Of course, it may take some more years, I'm sure. People that we are fighting against, so the government, the church, they are well financed, they have huge privileges and good contacts around the world with other fundamentalist groups. But we are going to win, because in general, our society is not a fundamentalist society. There is this group of people that is voting for them for different reasons, and the economical reason is very important in that case, because they are giving people money, as any populist government. And there is this government that is trying to show people that we are such a Catholic great country, but we are not. And this is something that also is being shown on social media.
How important in this whole process has the international community, or let's say civil society across Europe and other parts been?
I think that nobody will solve the Polish problems, because it will be something that, of course, we can expect this. I'm expecting the European Union to act. If you want to stay in the European Union, if the Union want to save their values and not be just economic union, and have those funds included into some values. Not that those municipalities who are creating those LGBT-free zones at the same time are getting more and more funds and being very happy. So if European Union want to have some values and defend them, so we need to change ourselves. The politicians also need to change the way of thinking about the Union. and think how to protect them, about the freedom of speech, because the populistic parties are growing everywhere, with and people who sometimes believe them, they are not doing the fact checking. So it's also concerned the freedom of speech and how they use the internet to get to the people, those populistic parties and right-wing people. I believe that we need help of the European Union. We was calling for it many times. Ursula von der Leyen made a hard statement about the LGBT zones. Now we are waiting for actions, because I'm just waiting that European Union will not be just the union of beautiful words, but the beautiful actions. The same Helena Dalli told that she will make some funding for the LGBT things in European Union. It's the only thing that we need, because we have a lot of activists, but they are not paid. So how they cannot change something? They cannot replace the state. They cannot change anything when they are fighting with such a big enemy with the big pockets of money. So at least we could have money, the same big amounts that are spent on the municipalities for the infrastructure and stuff like this. Why we are not putting this on the people and the values we want to protect so much?
You know how European Union failed us when we were entering the European Union. In 2004, when Poland was joining European Union, no one asked about the minorities. No one. And you see it right now that whenever any country wants to join European Union, they have to do something right now to protect the minorities. And we are getting to the point that Serbia, for example, that want to join European Union, has more rights for LGBTQ people than the country that is already within the European Union. So this makes this stupid situation that we are fighting for something that should be already done. And the other case is that many countries are like, okay, so just let's leave Poland and then we can be happy with our European Union. No. What is happening in Poland right now, it's not something that is happening only in our country, it's just happening faster. But the right wing, the neo-Nazis are rising in many other countries. So if we want to stop them, we have to fight it together and we have to do something together. So what I'm expecting from foreign countries is the support, not to leaving us, but either to educate and try to use the tools that they already have. And from people abroad, and this is something I'm doing a lot, I'm just talking to other activists from different countries.
This is actually what I was asking. What about other LGBT organizations, the solidarity among civil society and so on?
It's really good to know that someone was in this place that we are right now and they won. So there is also this possibility for us. So sometimes when I'm having a bad day, even a call to a friend from abroad is something that is really important.
Mm-hmm. Final question, I guess, for the both of you. As activists in Poland and countries you mentioned has seen this decline, and apart from Hungary, is seen as one of the most difficult places to be working in human rights and be an activist. What are some of the pressures and what are some of the motivations that you had going into this? And how was this sort of appreciated by your surroundings and people around you? And again, sort of the pressures from the state and media and so on. How do you essentially survive within this and keep on working and keep on motivating?
I think I'm just crazy.
Me too. If I could answer this question, I would told that I am also unable to do this. I don't know why I'm staying in Poland. I could have a better life somewhere else, Germany, Sweden, beautiful Norway, or anywhere else with my boyfriend. Have a beautiful life, simple life, be there, you have just one's life. And as many people are doing, this mass migration is happening right now. Many people are just leaving Poland. They just don't want to have anything to do with Poland. I understand them. And I don't know why we are staying. Maybe because we are so much deep in this battle. So it's maybe a bit harder to leave it. But there are some moments where you, of course, want to leave it. And it's hard to be an activist where the government is hating you, blaming you for everything. And you are scared to go out from your home. People are beaten on the streets. The smaller town, the city you are living, the more you are risking, of course. But those young people take this privilege and they still are bold and are brave and creating pride parades and whatever on the streets, climate strikes. because they don't want to be scared and live in the caves, and they want to take the responsibility for their lives. So this is the beautiful, that when I am thinking that I have bad, I usually think about others. This is helping me. I know that it's not working on all of the people, on those who I understand that was in a worse position than me. And there are many as this.
And Julia, for you?
When I entered the feminist movement, I was genuinely believing in this fight, because I'm a woman, I'm identifying as one. So it was very important for me to just do something for myself, for my sisters, for my friends. When I entered the LGBTQ movement, I entered it with this weird, peaceful in me, knowing that I'm not going to win. That maybe I'm not going to be the witness of this change. Maybe I'm not going to witness this huge victory. And maybe that's why it's easy for me to keep going, because at the beginning I made myself a peace with myself that maybe I'm not going to be there. But then I'm doing this equality parade, and these young people are coming up to me, 14, 15 years old, with tears in their eyes, saying thank you, because for the first time they could hold their beloved hands on the street, or they could come out as trans and could come for the first time, could come out with a trans flag. And you feel that you're just not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the next Julias, next Barts, because my childhood wasn't easy, and I don't want it for anyone else, just because for who they love.
Thank you. On a very touching note finishing. All the best for tonight. Stay safe, and I hope you wake up to a little bit more, or a little slightly more free Poland.
And this podcast will be available, so we're gonna see what will happen in Warsaw, because now we are just before.
Yes. Maybe we'll have to make a subsequent summary.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.